Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to talk to you all about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is collaboration, and specifically the importance of language in data collaboration. I think Malcolm and Daniel both already mentioned language a lot, and having no common language or misleading language in an organization leads to a lot of challenges, right? And I see it the same way, and I try to bring it more from a human approach as well today, about what the implications of not having the same language actually is, and what the relationship between language and data collaboration actually is. Quickly about myself. So as mentioned before, I'm currently working as a data strategy and data governance lead at ThoughtWorks Europe, which is a consultancy focusing on data and tech topics and bespoke solutions. I'm also engaged in the community of data management as the head of marketing of the German chapter of Data International, supporting a little bit the German-speaking community around data management professionals. I turned my passion for the human side of data into a book, as just mentioned, called Humanizing Data Strategy, which was just released 2 months ago. Everyone who's interested, feel free to give that a look too. Personally, I'm passionate about making music, Nintendo games, and silly humor, and I use my musical skills sometimes also for data stuff. More on that potentially later. I think why I'm bringing that up too is that I see music also as a language, right? If you think about it, language is for me the how you communicate, right? And there's a difference between what you want to communicate and how you communicate it. And when what you want to communicate usually exists in thoughts, right? In like non-tangible objects in your head. And what comes out of you usually is language-based. So music is a language. Myself being born and raised in Germany, but having Chinese parents, I grew up bilingually, right? And we're basically growing up in 2 languages also does something to you, right? And kind of creates that different link for you as well. So I understood in many ways from very little on the impact of language and how to be very conscious about how to use language in different ways. But let's talk about data collaboration first, right? Why is data collaboration more important than ever? And if we look just at the current state we're in, data is all the hype, right? For better or worse. There's higher speed and more complexity due to a higher digitalization of all the businesses. Business processes need to be adapted quickly to new demands, and that creates a lot of pressure on data, right? A lot of companies invested into data literacy and data democratization over the recent years, and that has the side effect sometimes that people don't know anymore where the data is going and what the data is being used for, because everyone is empowered now to do their own things, creating a little bit of a transparency problem, right? In all over the world, but especially also in Europe, we talk a lot about regulations and laws, right, that are creating some demand and pressure on data topics too, such as data privacy related, ESG related, or AI risk related now. And of course, we cannot talk about data without talking about AI. New technologies and industry trends are driving demand towards data too. But all of that have one thing in common, that as organizations, you need to cross-functionally drive it to manage these new demands and these new requirements, meaning that data collaboration itself is more important than ever. And that goes beyond just a transactional relationship between a central data team and everyone else, right? It goes to basically everyone understanding how to work with data and how to collaborate with data to actually make data as valuable as possible. And just to very briefly talk about why that makes sense to me too, this is the 5 C's framework that I'm using in my book, which is the 5 C's of how to humanize the data strategy, which are competence, collaboration, communication, creativity, and conscience. And 2 of those that I want to talk to you today about, of course, are here, right? Those are communication and collaboration. And I think we all know that feeling, right? When you collaborate with others and you just say something that you thought was just an objective right thing, and someone else all of a sudden is super offended by it and like is really upset and really frustrated. And that indicates very clearly that something happened in between, right? That the language that you thought was harmless and was just very straightforward raised some concerns or raised some kind of unique experiences or memories for the other person that they felt really upset about. So communication and collaboration go really hand in hand. And what I believe is that the underlying foundation of good collaboration is really rooted in trust, shared goals, and co-creation, rather than just transactional pressure that everyone gets, that you owe me to do this and you're responsible for this, so I need you to do this. But it should be coming from common goals, right? And to work together towards the same directive. And communication really is key, right? To build that foundation. in which language then is a uniquely human way to do verbal communication as well. And if we want to define what language is, right, I think especially in our space, there's so many different applications of the word language even nowadays, right? We can talk about it from an anthropological point of view, right, which is really the primary way of human beings to communicate each other. In domain-driven design, we talk about ubiquitous common language, right, shared by domain experts, users, and developers, for example. But in programming, you also talk about languages like SQL being a language or Python being a language, right, which is a set of instructions that enables humans to communicate with computers. So we all know this already on a very meta level. Even the word language means different things depending on the context. And that means we need to all find common ground, right, for language to actually work. And just a little bit about my own experience. I worked most of my career actually as a marketing data analyst in the beginning, and then switched to the data governance management side and strategy side. And while as a consumer insights person, I was very welcomed by everyone, right? All of the business units opened their doors, come to us, tell us insights, tell us what we can improve. When I switched with data governance in my title, all of a sudden, nobody even reacted to me knocking on the door, right? It was just like, what is going on? What does data governance want from me? They probably want to police me or something, right? So the word data governance, for me, all of a sudden, I realized, right, that has different connotations depending on who you speak to. So while I, as a data governance leader, for example, think about value and data quality and risk prevention, for others, they think about data governance being the data police. They want to micromanage all our efforts now. They want to just create more roadblocks in the projects, and I'm not going to continue my stuff. So that means we need to be clear, right? We need to contextualize. We need to be proactive to deal with data more intentionally. And I want to break that down how we do that, right? By basically having 4 aspects of a language. First, it's how we talk about data. Then it's about how we talk with the data, how we talk beyond data, and how we talk to each other. And in all of these 4 aspects, the language we use around data needs to be unambiguous, inclusive, and value-oriented to really make it an enabler in a business. So let's get started about how we talk about data, right? And really the key, what I'm trying to say is that we need to put language in an intentionally positive context, right? And try to bridge the gap for people using different languages and how to do that. Data modeling itself, I'm glad to see also now in the industry is making a little bit of a comeback, especially on conceptual and logical level and not just physical level nowadays. Because for me, that has always been a language in which people can talk about data cross-functionally, right? A conceptual data model ideally is easy to read and intuitive for a business person to also understand, to then basically have a starting point of a common understanding to do there. And then basically from conceptual, logical to physical layer, you can contextualize and clarify the language around data there as well. Then, of course, a lot is about storytelling, right? One of those buzzwords that have also existed now since years in this field. But storytelling, besides just the convincing and the getting buy-in part, also means you are very intentional about how you narrate what you're doing and why it's important what you're doing as well, right? And basically what it should do in the data space, it moves away from only what the data says to be descriptive to actually what the data means, right? So what is actually the insights we get from it? What is the value we get from it? What does it mean for me as an individual in the organization to do something about it? And in the end, right, inclusivity and positivity is important too, right? Use positive or neutral wording at least, and avoid terminology that has negative connotations in the organization. That is, I think, a topic that is partially very polarizing, but I've seen, for example, that people want to move away from the term master data because master itself came historically from this master-slave relationship kind of topic, and that's how it made it in the tech space. So some companies that are very aware of their DEI efforts try to call it primary data, right? Similar as in project management, for a long time we had war rooms, right, where you manage projects in real time and so on. And war rooms, especially in today's space, might not be the best way to call these kind of rooms, especially knowing what other kinds of wars are going on, right? And I think it's more about really being conscious about what words we are using, and especially in the data space, to not on top on a very complicated matter, even add more negative connotations that are creating almost like a hostile environment or just like a misunderstood environment there as well. Cool. Then how we talk with the data, right? And this is something where I feel our interactions with data is changing and is evolving too, right? And while at the very beginning, especially in departments where it was like a lower data literacy, of course, Excel tables were floating all around, right? And it was really having that grid view, everyone in front of them, and reading and editing tables, right? It was manual, it was very hands-on, very unscalable, and limited technical knowledge was needed. We could argue that Excel formulas themselves are a language too, right? Because we all had to learn it at some point probably, and we had to remember what Excel formulas do what kind of things with your data, right? And then over time with data warehousing and different things as well being more innovative, of course, querying and coding with data came more into place with languages like SQL or Python or R to really do more advanced stuff with it, right? And that was more code-based, it was more automatable and required specific development skills. But now I feel like also with the talks that we've heard today before already, it's more about a more human interaction in the future too. I think especially with LLMs and then chatbots in the future and any kind of other interaction models, it becomes maybe more chatting with intelligence actually, right? With the right knowledge layers out of there and basically chatbots that imitate human language, you can just ask ideally a chatbot about how your KPIs are doing, what kind of data quality rules can be derived from something, right? And all of these kind of things make it a much more human. But that is human language based, right? And it's about then how to prompt, for example, a chatbot to actually do the right thing. And that means that the semantic layer, of course, is of huge importance, even more, because we want to move to that direction of having more of an intuitive human way of communicating with the data. And data governance here is, of course, also key to make sure that that semantic layer and creating that common language and facilitating the cross-functional collaboration in that direction really brings it together. And then we can also talk about how we talk beyond data, right? Which is really creating value with data, right? And that is, I'm gladly also hearing about knowledge management today, right? And the DIKW pyramid, right? It should be more knowledge-driven rather than just data-driven, so to say. And that means we move beyond data objects by linking them actually to existing knowledge and also create new knowledge. With established knowledge, and that is actually the layer that we want to work with, right? Knowledge then is incorporated, and that makes us take better actions, and that is that middle layer where actually we are gaining insights and we interpret data in the right way to actually do things, which then goes into action-driven, right? It should be that the knowledge that we then gain is giving us undeniable motivation to take actions, right? Becoming more data-informed, being less gut-feeling-based, basically be more better in data-based management of things and business management. And it should actually lead us to take better actions and not just exist for its purpose, right? And lastly, even actions need to be prioritized, and we can't just take random actions. They should all be impact-driven, right? Meaning it should be intentional how we have data efforts and how we use value-driven terminology to focus on impact and not just excitement. That is a very human thing. Not just go for the most cutting-edge thing because it's innovative, but go what's right for your organization and what is actually driving value. And that requires, of course, to continuously evolve the data and AI culture in your organization, right? To actually use it that way and to move from just the operational data management in your day-to-day to create that culture where you're knowledge-driven, action-driven, and also impact-driven. And then lastly, it's also about how we talk to each other, right? Humanize data collaboration itself. I believe here that when it comes to collaborating around data, we need to move away a little bit from the transactional model and by using the also language that is very transactional, right? I'm talking specifically about words like service and self-service, right? Those are buzzwords that make a lot of sense from a technical capabilities and ops model point of view, but they imply a very transactional relationship, right? Service always means I give you something for something that you return to me, and that makes it, okay, transaction finished, we're done, right? But really to have sustainable collaboration towards the same goals means it should be rooted in trust, and that means co-creation under shared goals, right? Co-creation meaning we are both or multiple parties all contributing to one shared goal, and we all being acknowledged for the contributions we have. And then we can all say we co-created something new. It's not just I gave you the service, so you now have created some new thing, for example. And then also it's about how we talk about problems, right? I think there's more than enough challenges day to day that we are facing. And I feel like working data, the longer you get, many people get very cynical and they seem to complain a lot about what's going wrong. But we should not forget that with problems, ideally, we also think about solutions, and that just complaining about it is probably bringing the morale down, and being a bit more balanced, being about complaining about it and finding solutions is probably the better way just to actually bring things also forward. And that means we need to clarify problem statements in better ways and not just talk about the symptoms, but think about root cause of problems, and then to actually have that reflected in language and communication too. And then lastly, it's very normal to have disagreements and have different opinions in the data space, right? To basically just keep that in mind, that is actually a no-brainer to be constructive and not offensive, right? That disagreements and negative feedback is always valid, right? But they should not lead to emotional distress, because that otherwise turns very quickly from a very constructive conversation to a very personality-based conversation that is just going to slow things down and maybe lead to even irreparable damage afterwards, because the collaboration itself is suffering under it, right? And that means, ideally, there are some collaboration and leadership principles in working in data too, right? Something that is guiding everyone how to interact and how to work together. And if that means some mediation processes need to be done in terms of conflict, or some coaching regarding language, how to use it is important, then that could be an option to do so, but it should actually go from there. So I talked now a lot about how to basically talk around data, right? And how to basically also work with data. But also there's a way to think about how cross-functional communication leads to defining the right use cases for your data. And I call that the data purpose finding framework, right? It's very high level and actually probably not that groundbreaking, but it helps me also to structure to say we cannot just get started on things without first agreeing with other stakeholders and departments about what's the right thing. Basically saying that there are 4 elements about how to find your data purpose. And by having the overlap of the 4, then you can actually move probably forward in a much faster way. Which starts with what is exciting to do with data, right? That is all of the hype around AI and Gen AI, and everyone wants to bring new stuff into and trying out new things. The whole spirit of experimentation, right? But that needs to be aligned ideally with the business strategy of your data, right? Is that actually bringing value to your organization? In internal use cases, is it helping, for example, with productivity? Is it helping with data quality? And externally facing, of course, is it helping with customer experience? Is it helping with actually driving revenue? But something that actually is close and aligned with what your business wants to do. Then you have a little bit of what you are allowed to do with the data, right? That is both regulation-based and compliance-based on if it's even legal what you're doing or if you might get into legal trouble, but also ethics-based, right? By, for example, consulting DEI people or ethical experts in your organization, if they exist, to consider if this is even the right thing morally to do, what you're trying to do, especially when it comes to personal information, for example. And then lastly, what you technically can do with the data, and that is all about what actually your current technical capabilities are and how mature they are, and if you are able to have the right skill set, mindset, and the right technologies to actually do it, or if it's too far away right now, and it would be a big risk to just try to do it with the given infrastructure that you currently have. And by basically addressing all of these 4 elements, you need to talk to different people using different language, right? You need to talk to legal, you need to talk to strategists and business leaders, you need to talk to IT, you need to talk to data people, AI people. And by even just talking about the use cases themselves, you're gonna realize that you need to find common language across the use cases, and that ideally cascades down from the use cases then into a day of day-to-day working of how to communicate with each other, then again being ideally represented by the semantic layer and other ways of working. Cool. And with that, just a quick summary, right? Enabling data value through intentionally shaping and applying language is what I want all of you to encourage to do, right? Karl Albrecht said once, change your language and you change your thoughts, right? The idea is that not only do we control the language by how we have thoughts, but by speaking a certain language, you can also change your mindset in different ways by thinking more positively, for example, or just being more solution-driven. And that means you have an impact with your language, not only on yourself, but on others too. And that hopefully creates a ripple effect of using language more for positive and value-driven purposes. And that means it's about ubiquitous language, it's about the semantic layer and governance, and it's about evolving data culture and having the right collaboration and leadership principles. Cool, and before we go to the questions, I'm gonna show you a music video, which I would, in this context, call a merging of when I try to merge the language of music with the language of love, with the language of data quality. So here's a data quality themed love song called Match for Life that I wrote and produced. I define the target state of my feelings for you, and I am quite satisfied assessing the status quo. There's not much to improve, and I hope it sustains. My findings are conclusive, let me explain. You are so unique, no one else comes even close. You're the single source of you, no redundancy for sure. You made me complete, didn't know there are things I missed, but you're the single reason that I'm finally fulfilled. My feelings are consistent, consistently increased. In any time or place, you're the only one for me. These words are accurate, I really couldn't lie. Just ask anyone, I talk about you all the time. You came timely into my life, just in time you swooped in and stole my heart. It might make no sense, but it's valid to me. With the rules of love, I'm complying perfectly. My love for you is of highest quality. It's valuable and meaningful, just right for you and me. Our love fits the purpose, I can see it in your eyes. You and me, we are a match for life. We're creating love and consume it every day. We know what is right, and I know that you agree. Commitment's like a contract we signed with our hearts. Clear sailings of love from the very start. When we have any issues, we always have a talk. Remediate the root cause we hate workarounds. The rules of our love we update it every day. We learn from each other, and that's what makes it great. Strategically, tactically, and operationally, we manage our love unconditionally. The quality report of our love looks great. All our KPIs achieve 100%. My love for you is of highest quality. It's valuable and meaningful, just right for you and me. Just right for you and me. Our love fits the purpose, I can see it in your eyes. You and me, we are a match for life. You and me.